G'day to all my friends and family, and welcome to Jim's 5 a.m. Club. As you can see, I'm not at work today, and I'm not down by Sydney Harbour. I've just come for a bushwalk in the bush trail here close to home, and as you can see, it's nice and green. There's a bit of water around. It hasn't rained for a little while, but I want to go through a book summary today entitled Blueprint by Nicholas A. Christakis. Nicholas A. Christakis. Sounds like he's a Greek author to me, but you can't assume too many things these days. But let me just come a little bit further down here and chat to you about this book, and we'll see what we can glean from it, what we can get from it. Because as I say time and time again, there hasn't been a book that I've come across where I haven't learnt just at least one thing new, and where I haven't been able to join the dots and have an aha moment where I've learnt a little bit more about something that I wasn't quite sure about before. So this book here talks to us about the human species and evolution. And he makes a good point here, because he says that the arc of our evolutionary history is long. So the arc is long, very, very long. But it bends towards goodness. So the great news is that whilst we've been evolving over lots and lots of time, a long period of time, in terms of the baseline, I guess what we're saying here is that people tend to be good. We tend to develop in a way which makes us a better species and better people overall, and more caring overall. So that's the theory. Whether or not it happens in practice, I guess each and every one of us have experiences in our lives. But generally speaking, I guess the point that I want to make is that most of the people that I've come across in my life are generally good. We may be different in terms of our interests and our agendas, but nobody really goes out of their way to try and get in our way, I guess is the good way of saying it, unless they're probably family members or people who have had their noses knocked out of joint somewhere along the way. But generally speaking, most people that we'll come across are good, is what the author is suggesting here. And the author goes on to say that we are all much more similar. Each person, and as a species, we're much more similar in just about every aspect of our lives. Where we're different is in a few areas of our lives. So generally speaking, we all love, we can all appreciate art, we like to communicate. So most people have lots of similarities. And yet within those, we'll have people who may be different in some ways. But as we say, we're not different from each other, we're different for each other. So we need to leverage those differences. So as a species, the author is suggesting and saying that we've come a long way. We've come a very, very long way. And I guess in some ways we've also gone back in a long way as well. So, we've got a lot more advantages and a lot more better outcomes these days, but there's probably other things that we're missing, that we've lost through time, is one way of probably suggesting and describing it. So the author then goes on to say and to make some bold statements in terms of us as a species. And they say that our species does so well because of love and of monogyny. So monogyny it's probably a sexist way of looking at life, but monogyny means to have one woman, I guess, to have one partner, which, you know, from a woman's perspective is probably monoadra, you know, having one man. So they say that this is part of our blueprint, the fact that we know how to love, and predominantly we have one partner, or the desire is to have one partner, or at least one partner at a time. So from this author, once again, we're going to learn a little bit more about love. And he says that love is defined as the deep emotional connection. And I like reading these sorts of things. Love is the deep emotional connection between partners that surpasses sexual desires. So this is really interesting. So what they're saying is that true love is something that surpasses sexual desire. To want to be with somebody and to want to stay with somebody, even though your sexual desires have changed or evaporated, is a measure of deep love. So love for our companions helps to keep our species together. It helps to keep our families together through pregnancy and raising children. So I guess what the author is saying here, I've got to be careful I don't fall down and fall into the water. Just bear with me. I'm over and over. So what the author is saying here is that now during times of pregnancy and during times of raising children, then this whole sexual thing, the sexual desire, is not quite as important. But you still stay by your partner. You still stay by your partner when they're ill, or when they're old. You know, you see people who still stay together, even though they may not be having a lustful and sexual encounter. The fact that they're still together means that they've been able to transcend the whole sexual thing, to want to care for each other, to want to be with each other, even though the sex isn't the driving force. And I've got to admit, you know, once you become a parent, once you have children, your whole life changes, because your priorities change as well, because you've got bigger and more robust accountabilities and responsibilities. It's not just you and your partner anymore. Now you're responsible for little mouths and the future of them, and it just goes on and on. So I guess it's an important point that the author makes, that love is something that transcends. It's a deep emotional connection between partners that actually surpasses, like that is really powerful, surpasses the sexual desires. So the author then reminds us that the whole concept of polygamy is one of those things that tends to fail. It's proven to fail because the reason why it fails, it works in some places or it works in some times, but it tends to fail overall. And I'll tell you why it fails, or it can fail, according to the author. What he says is that assuming 50-50 male and female, if one man has multiple wives, then chances are that there'll be men who miss out. And for that reason, that system of polygamy, having multiple wives, or polygyny, not polygamy, polygyny, is prone to fail because some males will miss out. I understand in times of war, during the French Revolution, for example, when lots of men got killed, then it made sense to have a system of mistresses where one man could have more than one female, more than one sexual partner, and it was acceptable from a societal perspective. But what we're saying now is that in a world where we've got a population which is generally 50-50, it probably doesn't stack up. But then again, you've got populations now where not all men are heterosexual and not all women are heterosexual as well. So once again, that throws things into a bit of chaos potentially as well. Anyway, I won't stick to this point, but the polygyny system, where men in the past would miss out. So this is the important thing. So the reason why the author says polygyny doesn't work historically was that if you had one man with multiple wives and another man with no wives, because you've got no partner and you've basically don't have a compelling future. We're drawing a long bow here, but just hear me out. What they're saying is that for men who didn't have a compelling future, in other words, they couldn't get married, couldn't have a family, couldn't have the responsibility and accountabilities, they were more prone to participate in theft, violence, and rape because they didn't have much of a future to look forward to. So let me just walk down here. It looks a bit slippery, so I've got to be careful I don't end up in the drink down there. So I think I'll leave it here for now, but I'll just give you a different angle. So the next formal point to come out of this book is where the author talks about friendships. And he says, or they say, that friendships come in different shapes and sizes, but they make life easier for us and they help us get through the hard times. So family is important, but also friends. And friendships are one of those things which cut across cultures, regardless of which culture you're part of in the world. Friendship is something which is common to all. But it's interesting to note that some friendships or some cultures accept physical touch. I remember when I first went to Greece and my uncle grabbed me by the arm and was walking along the street holding my arm in his arm. And I felt really, really uncomfortable being brought up in Australia, and of course, you know, the whole touchy-feely thing wasn't something that men grew up with as predominantly as what they did in Greece. But, you know, men holding hands, I'm happy to do it now. Like, I'm really comfortable holding hands with men, hugging men, kissing men, of course, on the cheeks, and showing my affection to my fellow man, because I know that I'm heterosexual and there's no doubt about that. So I don't see other men from a sexual perspective, and hence I can hug and kiss them just like I can hug and kiss other women, knowing that, you know, I'm safe and they're safe. But you know, in some cultures it's frowned upon. They also talked here about there are some African tribes. There are some tribes in Africa where, you know, they wouldn't consider, or they see Westerners kissing on the lips and exchanging saliva, and they just can't believe it. They just can't understand how people can kiss on the lips and touch tongues and exchange bodily fluids. To them, that is the most disgusting thing of all. And yet, for us, for most of us growing up, you know, sharing a kiss with your loved one is probably the most beautiful thing that you could experience. But once again, it just goes to show that cultural norms have shaped the way we see the world and the way we experience happiness. So the author then goes on to, I guess, state the obvious, just in case you're not aware, but I do know there are a lot of people who like to isolate themselves and don't like to hang around with people. But the author here reminds us that friends are necessary for our mental and physical survival. They still are. Probably more so now than ever. You know, that people are important for our mental and physical survival. That's why we need to have circles of friends, but real friends, is the point that the author makes here. Because even in ancient times, people congregated with trust and with no expectation of reward. And that's what a true friendship is. To do things without expecting anything in return. So the last point to come out of this book, the last formal point to come from this authorship, is that mankind has flourished on earth even amid its challenges because of our ability to evolve and create cultures. So these cultures that we've created are a system, a linkage to link one generation with the other, to take shared knowledge and pass it on. Because in the past it served us well because it helped us survive. You know, we inherited ways of thinking. We inherited belief systems. We inherited rules of survival and rules of engagement because they helped us survive in the past. And these are survival mechanisms that are passed on, or theoretically should be passed on from generation to generation. And these are knowledge transfers. But like everything, the author said, and makes a very, very good point here, is that each culture, depending on your culture, each culture has a Darwinian principle as well, that through natural selection, only the cultures and the ideas that are valid or are still valid will get passed on and used. I'm really, really proud and happy to be part of a Greek culture and heritage, one that has survived for thousands of years and has been handed down from generation to generation in terms of religion, in terms of traditions, in terms of family bonding and engagements. There are lots of things within the Greek culture that I cherish, and I hope my children and grandchildren can keep as part of their cultural and ethical and cultural basis, I guess is the best way of saying it. I couldn't get my tongue around the word that I wanted to say, but I think you understand where I'm coming from. So what we're saying here is that there is a natural selection in culture and cultural norms, and only the ones that work are carried on. But the good thing, and what I'm hopeful of, is that the Greek culture has been time-tested and pressure-tested over thousands of years, and has been one of the cultural bases that has been infused into many other cultures throughout the world. And hopefully, as I said, my grandchildren and children can keep it, or keep the best of it, and pass it on and use it to their benefit, as long as it serves them. The important thing is, for whatever you do, whatever your belief system is, whatever your practices are, they need to continue to serve you in a changing world. But as we say, cultures that have stood the test of time and that have been pressure tested over hundreds and hundreds of years are a good indicator of cultures that have robust foundations and have cultural norms that work, I guess, is the final point that I want to make. So that's it. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club, where we've just gone through and talked about a book entitled Blueprint by Nicholas Christakis. And we'll finish off with a positive affirmation. I'm alive, I am well, I feel absolutely great. To my friends and family, stay connected, stay relevant, stay reasonable. and let's live, learn and pass it on. And as I said before, make sure that we pass on the cultural norms and the things which serve us and our future generations in a changing world. But as I say, is wisdom that has been handed down, time tested and pressure tested by previous generations, and it works. It worked for them, it's worked for me, and I'm sure and I hope that it may work for my children and grandchildren. But only time will tell. It's up to them to live their life and to make the most of what's been handed to them. So thank you very much, and I look forward to coming to you again from a different location with a different message, a message of empowerment, where, as I said, we can be the wind beneath our wings and we can help each other get through the morning, get through the day, and be partners in each other's development. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there for now. So Yassas, take care, Philakia, Christos Anesti to all my friends and family, and we'll chat again. Bye for now.